I think we're only missing, well, we might be missing 2 people. Okay, so I intend to record every single class session. I accidentally started this one 8 minutes late, so sorry about that. When I record these class sessions, they're going to be available to you, as I mentioned in that email, through your Google Calendar link. So you'll be able to see them, but I'm also going to post them to YouTube, and I'm going to have a piece under the content part of D2L that'll say like YouTube video links, and then you can watch it that way. So anyway, if you are not here today and watching the recorded lecture, I was talking about how we have this asynchronous component of the class that we have to do. Okay. Sorry, there's something like graying out, and I just want to see what it is. Okay, all right, we're good. Okay, so there's some general information here. Most of this is transfer information if you're looking to transfer to a different university. Sometimes they ask for a syllabus. A lot of times they don't, because if you're transferring, especially somewhere in Illinois or somewhere in Iowa or somewhere where we have an agreement, this class corresponds to these codes. So that's just for maybe future use. So we're summer 2021. I'm Carrie Faruqi. Now, a lot of you guys have already emailed me, and you emailed me at kfaruqi@elgin.edu. It's not the end of the world if you do that in the future, if you forget, but it's actually easier for me to keep track of our class emails if you email me at my student address. All of the teachers have a student email address, and it's actually our Gmail. So my kfaruqi@elgin.edu is not part of my Gmail. And since I do everything in Gmail, it's easier to keep everything here. So if you can remember to email me at this address, and that's the address that I emailed you from earlier today, that would be ideal. It'll help. And also those pop up on my watch, so I see them more quickly. For some reason, the other ones don't pop up the same way. But I get a lot of random ECC work emails on my other email account. So sometimes the student emails get lost. It's just easier to see them here. If you could please put your full name in your correspondence, that's helpful. I only have 1 class this summer. It's just you guys. So it's not a big deal that you don't have to sit there and say, I am from your 6 p.m. Calc 1 class. I'll know that. Just make sure you put your name in there. I have to put my voicemail on my syllabus because it's required as part of our contract. Please don't leave me a voicemail. I don't remember the last time I checked it. I don't even know how to check it from home. So it's been over a year. Don't leave me any voicemails, please. Just email me. It's you guys are so good with email. So I don't think anyone would even leave a voicemail anyway. But don't voicemail me, please. But if I don't put it on there, they'll yell at me and send it back. So I have to do that. Okay, so we're going through July 29th. That's 8 weeks. And it's going to go by really, really, really fast. I know it doesn't seem like it right now, but it's going to go by really fast. So July 29th is our last day. I kind of already talked about this, but I'm going to see you in our Google Meet Monday, Wednesday, Thursday from 6 to 8:20. I'm going to post a video, and I'll make sure it's really clear when I send it out so that you can watch it. For whatever material is going to get us through the weekend until Monday, I'll post that probably like late Thursday night. So if you're a night owl, you could even watch it like Friday at midnight, maybe. We'll see. But the earlier you get that done, the better. This is my first time doing it this way, so it's going to be kind of different, but I think it'll be good. And we'll kind of be able to break that up a little bit, because come on, Tuesday is like the worst day. Don't you guys feel like Monday's not that bad because you're kind of getting into it and you're kind of rested from the weekend? It's Tuesday that's bad. So this will at least give you a little bit of a break there. All right, so you'll have that asynchronous time over the weekend. Like I said, it's technically not going to be a 2-hour and 20-minute video. It might be an hour and a half, but there will be some homework that'll go with that, which technically is built into that asynchronous time. All right, so here's our Google Meet link. I've put that in several places for you so that you can quickly access it. Office hours. I'm really flexible with this. Over the summer, we're technically not required to have them. So I'm not trying to say that I'm never going to have office hours. That's not the case. But what used to happen was we weren't required to have them in the summer, but I would set them anyway. And once I set them, I have to attend them. So I would have something else that I could be doing, but I'd be like, oh, shoot, I have to go to this office hour. And I would sit there and no students would come to it. So I don't mind being in the office hour as long as there are actually students in the office hour asking questions. So what I will probably do if there is interest is just at least log on at 5:30 to kind of answer questions. Usually in Calc 1, students have questions and want to attend the office hour. That's not usually a problem with Calc 1. And if there's a lot of interest, I might even start logging on earlier, maybe at 5. What I can't really do is stay too late after class, just because I have a husband and 3 small children, and we also have a 12-week-old puppy, and my husband's kind of losing his mind right now. So the longer I'm up here, the more he's down there like, you need to come help. So I like to teach, and it's really what I enjoy doing. And the only reason I get to do it is because he's so helpful with the kids. So I don't want to push that too far. That puppy too adds a whole new dimension to that whole situation. So after class, I can't stay too long. If you have a couple quick questions, that's fine. Usually after class, people are kind of spent anyway, and they're kind of like, okay, I might have had a question about this thing and that thing, but they're usually people don't want to sit online for like an hour after your 2-hour and 20-minute class is up. So, oh, and by the way, that reminds me, don't let me forget, because I forget all the time. You technically have a break in this class. Now, what I usually do is just let you out early, because you're at home anyway. If you want to get up and go to the bathroom or do whatever you need to do, it's not a big deal. It's not like you're leaving a classroom and coming back, and it's not a big deal. So I normally just would let you out 10 minutes early and let you out at like 8:10. If it's going to be a big issue, you can let me know. Sometimes I don't like to break up the class in the middle and then send you off on a break and then come back. It just takes a little bit of extra time. So I'm just gonna plan on releasing you every night, like by at the latest 8:10. Because we do go to 8:20. So that'll give you your break time. And then for the office hour, I'll just be in this Google Meet. I'll just be in here earlier. All right, questions about the basic info?
I have a question.
Sure.
Hi. I was wondering if you're gonna have like a schedule that's like, we can see everything like weekly, like week 1, we're gonna do this, or like week 2, we have this. I like to print them and like put it on the wall. So I was wondering if you're gonna have one.
I have a basic like tentative schedule. It's not broken down like day by day, but it's like a basic guide of where we're going to be. And we will get to that. It's on page. I don't know if you saw it in there and you were wondering if it got more specific.
I don't really see anything like that, but what I'm saying is like something like this. So like every week you can see what topics we have to do. And I was just wondering if you have like anything like that.
Well, yeah, so for this class, it's going to be pretty basic. When we get to the tentative schedule, I'll make sure to come back to it and see if you have further questions on it. But it's basically going to be like, I'm going to cover these sections, and whatever sections those are, you're going to have website homework. So there's not going to be a whole bunch of like, do this assignment, that assignment. It's just going to be the section and the website homework. I know some classes have you do like challenge problems and group work and post to a discussion board and video guides. We're not going to have a bunch of assignments. It's going to be do the section, usually in class. If it's the weekend, watch the video, and then it's going to be do the homework. And then I have some tentative test dates too. But yeah, we'll get to that when the schedule part comes, and then you can let me know if you want me to expound on that any further.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, because I know that gets trickier anytime you have an asynchronous component. All right, so our textbook is Sullivan Miranda. Mine looks like this. Ugh. Early Transcendentals. Sorry, I should back out a little bit, but yours probably doesn't look like this anyway. So this is what mine looks like. Sullivan and Miranda, 2E, Early Transcendentals. Yours, if you got it from the ECC bookstore, does anyone have theirs that they can show? I don't know if anyone got it from
I got mine. it didn't come in actual, it just came in like package thing, so I'm gonna need a big binder.
Okay.
Is this all of calculus, like 1, 2, and 3, or is this just calculus 1?
It should be 1 and 2. But it looks
Okay.
like yours looks, because sometimes the cover looks different, but it looks like your cover looks like my cover. I guess me doing this makes more sense than trying to put it up in my document camera. Yeah, so if you got it from the bookstore, good. It looks like this, but it's unbound. So so it's loose leaf pages. They did come hole punched, right, Gregory?
Yeah, they did.
Okay, because I once had a student who said that theirs was not hole punch, and I'm just like, okay, that's ridiculous. You paid that much money and they didn't even hole punch it, bring it back. But yeah, it should be hole punch. So yeah, you're gonna have to get a big binder. But the book covers Calc 1 and Calc 2. So if you don't want to get a giant binder that's like, I don't know, 4 inches, Calc 1 is gonna go through chapter 5. Calc 2 picks up on chapter 6. So you can split it up into 2 binders if you don't want to have it all in one. So that's a good question. Calc 3 at ECC uses a different book. If you take Calc 2 at ECC, they will use this book also. So you'll be able to use it for both. The book is not technically required for my class. If you got it from the bookstore, it probably said it was required. And the reason they do that is because for Calc 1 at ECC, they always say it's required, because if you take Calc 2, it might be required also. And they just want to make sure you have it for the next class. But it does not matter to me if you have the book. It's going to be really helpful to you, I think. I also found out that I thought students got access to the ebook through WebAssign, and it turns out that's not the case. And maybe some of them get it and some of them don't. I thought it came for free with WebAssign. It does not. I have it in my account. Other students said it prompted them to pay for it. So there's going to be like 1 or 2 instances where I'm going to assign homework problems from the book. If you don't actually have the book, it's not the end of the world. I'll give you the questions so you can see what they are. So it's not like, oh my gosh, I can't access the homework and I'm out of luck. Don't worry about that. But the book is a nice resource to have, especially if you're going to be taking Calc 1 and Calc 2. You'll find it helpful. The examples will be helpful. Sometimes just seeing more examples is a way that you can clear up a lot of confusion. Personally, I used my book all the time as a student. But even if you rented the hardcover copy, that's fine too. Just make sure it's the right one. The online homework is required. So I'm looking at the screen. I should be looking at this. So we're going to be using WebAssign, and this is actually our last semester using WebAssign with this book. So if you have not yet used WebAssign and you have the option to only purchase like 1 semester's worth of WebAssign, just do that, because in the fall, there's some weird issue happening with the publisher, and they're going to be switching homework platforms. So even though ECC is still going to be using the Sullivan Miranda textbook, they're going to be moving over to a platform called Achieve, which I have not yet used. It's kind of like my math lab, kind of like WebAssign, but it's different. So I don't know. Should be interesting. So if you don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm also taking Calc 2 at ECC, I should get a whole year of WebAssign, because you're not going to be able to use it in the fall. That is at least my understanding. Okay, so there's that. But for the summer, at least, you'll have to have the WebAssign. Our class key is on here. I've put that a couple different places also. So when you enter into WebAssign, it's going to prompt you for a class key. If you got your book through the ECC bookstore, your bundle should have included an access code to pay for WebAssign. That's not the same thing as a class key. The class key just gets you into our WebAssign class so that you can access our homework assignments. An access code is basically just your way of paying for the WebAssign. Now, if you did not get your book from the ECC bookstore, I don't think you need to go buy a separate access code. You can enter your class key into WebAssign, and then it should prompt you to pay for it from there. And then it should give you some options as to how much access you want. Because I'm pretty sure a student once told me he like only paid for 18 weeks, or that was like a regular semester. I don't know if there's a summer semester option even that's half that time. Not sure. But this will get you into our class. If you have any questions about registering, you can let me know. I saw that several of you already registered in our class for WebAssign, so I was really glad to see that you guys are on top of this. For a calculator, I'm going to be using my TI-84 CE, which is the color edition. It's really nice for graphing. If you don't have a CE, not a big deal. All you really have to have is an 83 or an 84. If you have an Nspire, see if you can borrow an 83 or an 84 from someone. An Nspire is fine. It just does everything a little bit differently. And some of the commands that I'm going to be showing you how to use are going to be very different on an Nspire. I have an Nspire somewhere around here. I don't even know where it is now because I don't use it that often. And a lot of the things that I do on the Nspire are not the same types of things I would do on the TI. It's just not as intuitive. I know that some students in high school are taught to use the Nspire, so some of you guys are really comfortable with it, and that's okay. I'm not going to ban it. Some teachers, I guess, are banning it because it has more memory, maybe. I don't know. It's fine. You can use an Nspire. Just I'm going to be using a TI, which is what I recommend. Questions about the book or the calculator? Okay.
Is it okay if we get the first edition or no? Do you think there's any differences?
I still think the first edition book will be helpful. If you're getting exercise sets out of there, like, I mean, if you're just doing extra examples, yeah, it'll be totally helpful. But if I assign homework from the book, which like I said, is only going to happen like maybe 2 times the whole semester, double check with me and make sure the problems are the same, because that's one thing they do is they change the problems between editions. So I don't want you to say, oh, I did the homework and then have it be the wrong numbers.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions about the book or the calculator? All right, so your prereqs, there's a reading prereq just because you've got application problems that you're dealing with and some of the theorems, I guess. There's a math prereq where you have to take college algebra and trig or appropriate placement test score. So if you came to this class fresh out of high school, you probably came in from a placement test score. There used to be an ACT score as part of the prereq. Like you could use that in lieu of a placement test, but maybe they make everybody do a placement test now. Either way, you're here, so I'm guessing they didn't screw that up for you. So that's good. All right, so this is your first of 3 courses in the calc sequence. You can read here to kind of see what types of things we're going to be doing. We will get through pretty much all of this stuff. Depending on time, there may be a topic here or there that we're going to cover in a little bit less depth, but there's a lot to do, and we're going to get through that. So it will be awesome. I don't mean to sound negative about that. I really love this class. I teach Calc 1 more than any other class because I love it so much. I love Calc 2 also, but I really love Calc 1. I don't know what. Summer Calc 1, I always have like the best students, the best class. I wish we were in person because it would be so awesome. I love teaching Summer Calc 1. Anyway, really excited. All right, required course materials. Bring the following with you to class every day: your notes and your calculator. It would be a good idea. I can't enforce it. I don't know what you have going on over there, but I mean, I don't want you just to be passively watching what I'm doing. It would be nice if you could follow along on your calculator. So yeah, that. Okay, so there's an attendance policy, which I did not change from previous summers. In a normal semester, missing more than 2 weeks will get you booted from the class. In the summer semester, everything is cut in half. So missing more than 1 week will get you booted. But since we have that one asynchronous day, I didn't know if I should leave it at 3, move to 3, or leave it at 4. I left it at 4 just because our classes are technically recorded. So it's not like, oh gosh, I missed an in-person class and I'm out of luck. But you do need to be here. And I have had issues with students in the last semester and since we've been online where they have not been attending our Google Meets. And I do get an attendance report straight from Google. So sometimes I forget to take attendance in class, but I always get a report after telling me who was here, what time they logged on, what time they logged off. I mean, I can see that. So if you didn't come to our Google Meet, or if you were only in our Google Meet for 6 minutes, that does not count as attendance. So if you're missing more than 4 classes, so 4 is okay, but more than 4, I'm going to drop you. And I don't have time to sit here and look through the attendance every day and start warning people and saying, oh my gosh, you missed 3, you need to be careful. You need to keep track of that on your own. If you're wondering, I mean, sometimes I'll have a student say, they'll email me and say that they have somewhere to be that night, or they have some appointment, or maybe they had a job interview in the afternoon and they know they're going to be in traffic and they're not going to be able to log on until 7, something like that. That's fine. If it's every once in a while, as long as you're here for at least half the class, that's fine. But if it's a continual thing where you're here for 20 minutes and then you leave, I mean, that does not constitute as attendance. So you need to be here. If you are not here, yes, technically you can view the class recording, but it's really hard to keep up, especially if we're not keeping up with the recordings if we miss class. Summer Calc 1 is awesome because you're kind of immersed in it every day, but it's rough because you have to keep up every day. That's why we have an attendance policy for any semester, but especially during summer. It's very hard to keep up. You got to keep up with it, and that's why I try to force you to do that. Now, technically, once the drop date hits, which is, I believe, July 11th, yes, we'll get to that. On July 11th, I'm not really going to be taking attendance anymore because after the drop date, it's really hard for me to drop somebody from the class. I have to get administrative approval, and it's a big fiasco. So that being said, if you're going to miss more than 4 classes, make sure it doesn't all happen before July 11th. I don't want to encourage you to not be here, but that's basically the date by which you need to make sure that all of your attendance is good to go. Let's see, if you're late to class, that's not really a big deal anymore since Google started sending me these reports, I guess. They weren't doing that for a while. If you miss your class, it's your responsibility to view the recordings. So you can't just be like, oh, I missed class. What did I miss? Well, the nice thing about being online is that you can go on and view the class later. So you can do that. So that's attendance. Now, I am going to get to quizzes down here at the bottom, which kind of relates to attendance, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Grading. The homework is 20% of your grade. That's an easy 20%. Oh, it drives me crazy, and I go through this every single semester. I'll have like 1 or 2 students who are getting B's on their tests, or maybe high C's, but they're not doing their homework. Their homework scores are maybe like 40%, 30%, and it drags their grade down. And then at the end of the semester, they're wondering why they're barely making a C, and they have a 65 in the class, and they're like, holy cow, I might not pass. What am I going to do? And then it becomes this really stressful situation. And I feel bad about it, but I also don't feel bad because when you're not doing your homework, I mean, I'm making it very clear, and I'm making a big deal about it right now. It's worth 20% of your grade, and it's going to be a pretty easy 20% to do because you have like not an unlimited, but you have like 20 tries at each problem. So you have plenty of time to keep working on it. If you have questions, you can send me a question in WebAssign. I can help you with it. You can say, hey, would you mind meeting with me before class so we can go over this problem? I mean, there are a lot of resources here for being able to do your homework and get 100% on it. The people who actually do it are very likely to get like at least A's on it. So do the homework. It's 20% of your course grade. If you get all A's on everything else in this class, but you don't do any homework assignments, the best you could possibly hope for in this world is an 80% B, which is just barely cutting it. Do the homework. And even last semester, I had this student email me, and he was like, I know you made such a big deal about us doing the homework, and I should have listened. I'm just like, why? Every semester, do the homework. Quizzes are going to be 10% of your grade. I'm going to talk about quizzes in a few minutes. We're going to have 2 of them every week. Chapter exams, 55%. The final exam is 15%. The final exam used to be 20%. But since we're online now, a lot of instructors kind of dropped that a little bit lower. You're going to have 5 chapter exams. However, I'm going to drop your lowest one. So each one's going to count for, I don't know, 12.5% or whatever it turns out to be. Standard grading, ABCDF, 90, 80, 70, 60. For your homework, every time I complete a lesson, I'm going to put up a web assigned homework assignment after the lesson's over. So you're going to, anything that I assign on Monday, so like today we're going to go through a pre-calc review, will be due Wednesday. And I know that seems quick and you're like, holy cow, that's a quick turnaround. It's a summer class. Everything happens twice as fast. So normally I would give you a week to do the homework. Now you're only going to have a couple of days to do the homework because you have to stay on top of it. So anything I assign Monday is going to be due Wednesday before class. Anything I assign Wednesday is going to be due Friday at 6 p.m. And then anything I assign Thursday or over the weekend will be due Monday at 6 p.m. So you'll have the weekend to work on that. The last thing I want, though, is to have all 4 sections or however many sections we cover, have all those homework assignments due Monday. And then let's say you fall behind and now like, holy cow, it's Monday morning and I have 4 sections worth of homework to do. And that's not going to go well. So I try to do my best to help prod you along because I know it's hard to do this, especially in the online environment. So I'm trying to keep you on task here. Now, late homework will not be accepted, but there is an option for you in WebAssign to request an extension. I'm not going to grant them like every single time, but if it's every once in a while and you ask for an extension, I will grant those for you. It's not a big deal. It's somewhere in WebAssign. I think it's pretty obvious because I get these all the time, but you'll hit the like ask my instructor for an extension button. So that is available to you. I will drop your lowest 3 homeworks. So let's say there are some you don't get to or some you didn't do that well on. It's not the end of the world. There'll be so many homework assignments anyway that each one is not going to count for that many points in the end, but together they all really accumulate. Okay. It's typical that for every 1 hour spent in class, you should expect to study and do homework for at least an hour outside of class. That's a general rule that I always heard. Some of you will need more than that. Some of you will need less. Some of you will breeze through this and others will be like, oh my gosh, I was in tutoring for like 3 hours today. Everyone's different. Some people are just better at math than others, and that's just the way it is. Questions about homework and attendance and grading? Great. Here's your WebAssign class key again. There's that. So if I do assign homework to be completed by hand, it'll be for graphing sections, especially with curve sketching, which is in 4.5, 4.6. So that won't be till chapter 4. I can't think of anything I would do that for before we hit chapter 4, but I'll revisit these instructions when the time comes. You don't have to have graphing paper, by the way. When we do graphing, it's helpful to have, but you won't have to have it. Not going to require graphing paper. Quizzes. Okay, so we're going to have a very short, like 10-minute quiz at the beginning of each class on Monday and Thursday. Now that assumes that there's not an exam scheduled on those days. So if we have an exam, then clearly there will be no quiz. The quizzes, some students find to be a little more challenging because I try to make, they're going to be on D2L. Yeah, the quizzes are available on D2L. I try to make them a little bit harder to cheat on because I'm not going to be proctoring you during the quiz. You don't even have to log on to our Google Meet until after you've submitted your quiz. So you don't have to log on until 6:10 or whatever it is. Occasionally I'll do a 15-minute quiz if I feel like there are questions that are going to take a little more time. But I try to make them a little bit more conceptual. They're only worth 10% of your final grade, but again, those do accumulate. And students who know what they're doing will do really well in the quizzes. There are going to be about 2 to 3 questions from the content on the quiz. Like I said, it will be timed, so it'll turn off at your 10-minute mark or whatever I've set it to, but it'll be clear on there how much time you have. And when you're done with the quiz, it'll show you the key. Well, not the key, but it'll show you, what the answers were to the questions. And then if you want after the quiz, when we start class, you can ask me questions about something that you saw in the quiz that you had a hard time with. So that's how the quizzes are going to work. For the tests, we're going to have 5 of them. That's just sort of the way the material breaks down, because we're going to be covering 5 chapters in this class. So we're going to have 5 exams. Now, what I love about having 5 exams is that I get to drop your lowest test. When we only have 4 tests, I can't drop the lowest one. But when we have 5 tests, I can. I will go ahead and tell you right now, the hardest test in this class is going to be test 4. Test 4. Yeah. That's probably going to be the hardest one for everybody. But, everyone's going to have a different one that's going to be harder for them than someone else. If you bombed the first one, then you're going to get your butt in gear and work harder, and you'll probably do better on the other ones. But test 4 is probably going to be the harder of the 5, hardest of the 5. But who knows? That's not always the case. You can't make up any exams. So that's the big difference here with having one that you can drop. Since I do allow the option to drop your lowest quiz, if you miss one, that's going to be your dropped one. If you have some sort of emergency, and this comes up a little bit more often in the summer, like for instance, that you have, like maybe we have a Thursday test and you have a wedding to get to that weekend and you're standing up in the wedding and the wedding's on a Friday and you have to travel out of town and you're not going to be here. It's not the end of the world for me to give a test early if I have to. I don't want to because I have to write a second version of the test if I do that. But you can take the test early if absolutely necessary, but you can't take it late. So once you miss the test, it's done. That ship has sailed. And you'll get a 0 on it, but then it'll hopefully be dropped. But if you miss more than one test, well, now you're going to get an actual 0 on the other one. Okay. I put up, and I don't know if anybody has kind of picked through our D2L page yet. I posted like a video of using, I think it was Genius Scan to scan in written work. Now, this is really important for your chapter exams because I'm going to be proctoring you during your chapter exams. So before your exam, I'm going to send out an email and basically, kind of give you the guidelines for what I expect to see when you're taking an exam. But you're going to be on camera, and I'm going to need to see a specific camera angle, and I'm going to need the camera to point so that I can see you and your work. I should probably send this out sooner rather than later so you can make sure you're ready. I don't want to send it out too last minute if I forget about it. So I'm going to send something out soon so that you know exactly what you're going to be expected to do for the first exam as far as proctoring is concerned. But you will be proctored, and when you're done with your exam, you're going to have to scan in your work and upload it to D2L. Now, we've been online for over a year now. Most of you, I think, have been students for most of this time, and you're probably pretty familiar with how to actually scan your work into a PDF and submit. If you are not, please watch the video. It's on D2L. It's under course information, and it's something about like how to submit written work or something like that. I made the video, so it's kind of rudimentary, and I made it like a semester ago with like my screen capture, but there's a YouTube link for it, so you can watch that. But you're going to have to be able to scan it into one PDF file. So if you want to practice that in the meantime, that would be a great idea. Sometimes I even set up like a practice folder in D2L so you can upload a practice submission just to make sure that you are aware of how this works before test time. Because you're going to have everything submitted by like 8. I give you until 8:20 until the class is technically over. I give you the full class for tests, by the way. So I'm going to give you till 8:20. And then for the first test, I'm going to give you an additional 15 minutes so you have time to upload, take your pictures and get everything uploaded For the second test, we'll move that down to 10 minutes. So everything will have to be uploaded at 8:30 because you should be pretty good at it by then. But for the first test, I'm going to give you a little extra time. I want to make sure that you're all very familiar with how to scan your work into a PDF and upload it to D2L. So do practice that. In the meantime, watch that video on D2L. D2L video that I made. It's under content. And it's about scanning to a PDF. I use Genius Scan. I know a lot of students use Cam Scanner. Some people use something called like Adobe Scan maybe. I've seen all kinds of different scanners that students use. Some students even have tablets that they can write on, and then they write on their test on the tablet, and then they submit it that way. So if you want to do that, that's fine too, as long as it's submitted in one PDF file. So I'm going to send you the test in a PDF. If you want to write on it, that's fine. It needs to be uploaded as one file. I can tell students that till I'm blue in the face, and then I'll have a student who will submit like 10 JPEGs, and they're like, I don't get it. It's only accepting one every time. And I'm like, because it only is set to accept one file. If you try to submit more than one, it's going to ask you if you want to replace the previous file. It only is going to accept one. So one PDF. And don't email it to me, because I'm just going to email you back and say, please upload it to D2L, because I grade it in there, and then I enter the grade in D2L, and then the test gets tied to your grade book. It's like linked together so that you can see it all right in the same place, and then I can view it again if I need to. Okay, so that's that. Tentative chapter exam dates. These are tentative. They might change, I don't know. This is my tentative plan. 6/20 is not that far away. Well, you have 13 days, so that's actually pretty good. But notice that the test after that will be 1 week later. The chapter 2 test will be a lot shorter. The chapter 2 content is easier. The chapter 3 and the chapter 2 honestly kind of go together. So those two are a little bit shorter. This one you're going to have a little bit more time on. That's your chapter 4 test. The content is a little bit more challenging. Chapter 5 is definitely shorter. That one we're going to turn around quickly. I'm going to have to figure out exactly what we're going to do with our asynchronous time down here in this final week. So this is our tentative class schedule. Your final exam is not moving. That's on July 29th at normal class time. You can't make up the final exam. If you miss it, you just don't get that 15% of your grade. But here's the tentative class schedule. It kind of tells you what we're going to be doing on each day. So for instance, today we're doing syllabus review, and we'll do a pre-calc review. I'm not doing any more pre-calc review beyond what we do today unless you have questions outside of class for me. And then we'll start with 1-1 through 1-4. So what we're probably going to do is, let's see, on Wednesday we'll probably do 1-1 and 1-2. And then on Thursday we'll do 1-3 and then start 1-4. Maybe we'll do like finish 1-2 and do 1-3. And then I would probably give you something asynchronous to do for 1-4. Like I said, this is all tentative, and the way that it breaks down is a little bit different over summer. I'm not used to having that asynchronous day built in. So we're sort of going to see how it breaks down. So it's really hard for me to say, here's exactly what we're going to do on this day. Here's exactly what we're going to do on that day, because some topics take longer depending on which particular class I'm teaching. It's really odd. I mean, most of the time, a topic is going to take as long as it takes, no matter who is in the class. But it's weird how from semester to semester, some things change depending on what class I have. Some classes are really strong. Usually my summer students are a little bit stronger, and they go through things a little bit faster. So we'll see how it goes. Sometimes I have classes that are a little slower, and I have to cut stuff out. So that could happen. We shall see. But yeah, so this is our schedule. Going back to, okay, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Berfin?
It's Burfin, yeah.
Okay. Did this answer your question about the schedule?
Yeah, I mean, since you said we don't have as many like assignments, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, looks fine. Thank you.
And as soon as I upload your asynchronous stuff for the weekend, I'll send out an email and say, okay, it's up. This is what sections, these are the sections I covered, and there's a homework assignment up for it, just so everyone's aware. Because I don't want to upload it and have everyone be like, oh, I didn't notice it was there, or I didn't think to look for it, or anything like that. So, so it will be ready for you. Yeah, I'll do it on Thursday nights, just so it's done.
Okay, thank you.
The whole weekend. So there'll be that. Okay, so this is our, and it looks so short because it's only 8 weeks, which seems so crazy because I think last semester was like 19 weeks or something crazy like that. Everything is just really crammed in the summer, but it always works out just fine. We'll adjust as needed. We always do. Your withdrawal dates, 6/20 if you want an 80% refund, 6/27 for a 50% refund. Your magical date is 7/11 if you decide that maybe you are not doing as well as you had hoped and you want to take a W. Maybe if you think you might not pass and you're just kind of like, ugh, don't know, take the W, do it by July 11th. Otherwise, if it's after July 11th, you're just going to get what you get. So I'm going to try to remind you as that date approaches. Usually I remember. This one's easy to remember, 7/11. But that's your magical drop date. Okay, so important tips for success. Don't fall behind. I know it sounds really obvious, but it's so easy to fall behind in a summer class, no matter what the class is, especially Calc 1, especially if math is not your strongest subject. You have to stay on top of this stuff every day. The nice thing about summer classes is that you do see me more often and you're getting pounded with this material more often. So I think it's because you're kind of in it all the time, it's a little bit harder to fall behind in some ways. It's not like, you know, I see you Monday and Wednesday and then I don't see you again for 5 days. It's kind of nice in the summer that you just see the material more often. I took Spanish in the summer at ECC when I was a student at ECC, and I loved it because it was just Spanish every day, just like so much Spanish. It was like being immersed in it, and it really helped me to learn it versus a regular semester where it was kind of spread out and I had time to do other stuff and forget about it. All right, so don't fall behind. Don't leave anything blank. Do the best you can. If there's a question on the test and you're not exactly sure what to do, you think you might have an idea, but you feel like you don't want to write it because it's stupid, write it anyway. I have a rubric set out that has points for every little thing you write. Maybe you'll write 1 or 2 things that could have given you 1 or 2 points. I mean, every little time that happens, you're accumulating points that you wouldn't have had otherwise. Don't leave anything blank. Scores of 0 are really, really bad. I know sometimes we feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm frustrated and I don't know, I'm just going to leave it. Just do the best you can. Do something. I always suggest read your text. I can't force you to do it. It's not just a set of exercises. I think it's a great resource, but that's up to you. I suggest going through examples, especially if you miss class, especially if there's a topic you're not sure about, or maybe you were kind of like, this example, I think I understood what she did, but I need to see another one. Well, your book has all of that worked out for you, and that would probably answer a lot of your questions. When I was a student in calculus, I would take my book and I would sit in the VPAC. It's not called the VPAC anymore. It's like Building K or something. I'm not entirely sure. And I would just sit there up in like that roof area over the theater, and I would just work on calc problems. And I knew nobody could find me there and distract me and talk to me. But I would go through every problem in the book because even though every problem wasn't assigned, I knew the more problems I did, the more I would see, the better I would get, the more tools I would have at my disposal. I always suggest doing extra problems, especially if you're not quite sure, but you think you're getting there and you need to see a little bit more. Just do some more examples. Ask questions in class. That's especially important in this online environment. You're going to have to ask. Luckily, usually every semester, I'll get 1 or 2 students who tend to ask a lot of questions, and they sort of take over that. I don't mind that. I mean, I would like for everyone to feel involved, but as long as somebody's asking the question, hopefully, if you know, there are like 5 other people who had the same question. At least that does help other people. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm the only one asking questions and I'm probably driving her crazy. It's not driving me crazy. That's why we have a synchronous class. Otherwise, every single class we had would be just you guys watching videos. This is nice because you get to ask questions and give feedback and get answers. And that's why we're here doing this. I so wish we were in class in person because we'd be able to do so much more of that. It's very frustrating to me. I'm going to keep talking about that, so I have to just get off of that topic. So ask questions, keep your tests and their solutions. Every time you take a test, I'm going to upload a key to the test so that you can look through it, compare your answers to the key, see what you missed, and that'll help you to study for your final exam. Now, any behavior that interferes with the learning environment and disrupts the classroom experience of others is prohibited. That isn't usually an issue in an online class, but I guess you never know. Any questions here? Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to see if I can. Oh, there we go. Okay, cheating has been a big, huge issue, as you can imagine, since we moved to remote learning. I do the best I can trying to proctor you. I try to give really good guidelines for camera angles. I'll bug you about it if it's not right. I won't send you a test if I can't see you. I have had students, it's been very unfortunate. Oh, the first semester we were online, I had this student and he was in class with me for half the semester before COVID, and then we all went online. So I knew what his handwriting looked like already. He was seriously submitting me tests that he forwarded from his girlfriend's NIU account. And it was totally not his handwriting. And I'm just like, he forwarded this to me from a Zmail account. I'm just like, come on. So many crazy things. That was just one of many crazy things. I've seen a lot of crazy cheating things. Sometimes I think students maybe have the idea that I'm just trying to take points off their test. Honestly, if you don't show me your work and it's not clear to me where something came from, then how do I know? I can do my best to proctor you, but you have to support your work with some sort of documentation that you have written down on your test. If you have the lines of math that tell me what everything is, then there's no reason for me to suspect anything odd is going on. But if all of a sudden you have a quadratic equation and then at the bottom you have the answers to the quadratic equation and you have no information for me about how you obtained that, and they contain, radicals and all kinds of other crazy things in them, I'm just like, where did you get this? Like, you have to support your conclusions with work. Otherwise, I don't know where it came from and I can't give you points for it. Remember how I said I have this rubric where every little thing you get points for? It works the same way where if you don't include things, I take off points for it. And it includes lines of work, or it would include maybe units for a word problem. But all of that stuff needs to be included just so that I know that you know what you're doing. I don't want to have to worry about that. So cheating will be dealt with severely. Cheating includes, but is not limited to, A, use of unauthorized assistance in taking quizzes, tests, or exams. B, use or dependence on the aid of sources beyond those permitted or authorized by the instructor in solving problems or carrying out other assignments. The acquisition without permission of tests or other academic material belonging to a member of the college faculty or staff. Academic dishonesty has serious consequences. These may include a failing grade for the assignment, a failing grade in the course, up to and including expulsion from the college. So be aware. Most of the instructors are pretty much up on the cheating these days. We've been doing this for a while now. I don't mean to set this up as like, I don't trust you, but we've had a lot of bad situations and we got to do the best we can. So don't put yourself in a position where I have to wonder, like, is this actually their work or not? Tutoring. This is going to be especially important to you. I encourage you to sign up for free online tutoring. I know we're so tired of Zoom, but it is over Zoom. there's a link. Now, of course, on the PDF of this, the link should be popping up for you. But there's a Google Doc created by the Tutoring Center. I believe that from this doc, you have to then click on the math section because there were 2 different documents. One of them connects you to a schedule. This one kind of just gives you general tutoring information, and then you click on like the math schedule, and then you can go sign up for times. I don't know if there's a limit. I think like you can't just like book somebody all day long, but there might be a limit per day. But I mean, I had students last semester who were just in there all the time, and they said it was really helpful. They spent like the whole morning in tutoring. It's free. So it's a resource to you. Don't wait till the last minute. If you think you might need tutoring, go to the Tutoring Center. It's not like there are a bunch of high schoolers in there. They're actual ECC math teachers or actual like people with master's degrees of mathematics who are tutoring in there. They know what they're doing. They've seen this stuff a lot. So they're very helpful. You can also sign up for access to the Tutoring Center D2L page by visiting the tutoring page that I listed here. Okay, sorry, I thought I heard a beep for the chat. Done. Disability services, you know if you are entitled to them. Please make sure that if you have documentation for a disability that I get it. It's not really up to the student anymore to provide that to me, so I guess you can check in with me to make sure I got it, but usually that stuff comes straight to me from the Student Disability Center. So if you have something that's documented, someone has a question. Oh, was it like a hand raise? Sorry, I didn't mean to leave this thought. Someone has a question. I believe that was the beep. Oh, it was a hand raising. Okay, I think the hand raising is new. Sorry, I was like, what is this beeping? Sorry, Renee.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah, it's fine. So for the tutoring, is it open to where you can go into the ECC to see a tutor, or is it still just completely online?
I know ECC is open, and that's why I meant to look at that today, but I think it's completely online because I didn't get an email from the Tutoring Center saying it was in person. I'm going to double check. I'll make a note to myself.
Yeah, because I'd much rather prefer to go in than do it via online because it's a little bit harder.
Oh, yeah. No, I know. I mean, just trying to have an office hour online is killer for me because I feel like I can't prompt students as I go through a question. I pretty much have to just tell them how to do it because it's very hard to have a back and forth. They've been doing it for a while, so hopefully they have a good setup for that. But yeah, trust me, I know. It's terrible. I signed up to teach college algebra this fall just because it was the only class I could find that was hybrid, just because I needed to not be sitting here doing this anymore. I don't even like teaching college algebra. I just don't want to do this anymore. So I hear you, but I will check on the in-person tutoring. I don't think they're having it, but I will double check.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, sorry, did anyone else have a question about that? Okay, so for disability services, if you need extra time on your tests, if you have some sort of other accommodation need, I've had students in the past who are paraplegic and they can't even write their own test answers and they have to have someone write that for them. This is all stuff that needs to go through the Disability Center. I've had students with vision problems who need to have their font blown up, stuff like that. I have to get some sort of documentation for that because technically if documentation is not provided, then support is not required. So please double check if you were supposed to get documentation that I did not get. Check in with them. If you need it, you know you need it, and I am legally bound to comply with whatever accommodations you require. So that it's a legal document. So please make sure that if there's something you need, you're getting it. Okay, veterans, we thank you for your service. And most veterans are already aware of the services that ECC provides, but there's some information here about that. Placement retesting, I don't know if that's really gonna apply to you guys. I meant to take this out of the syllabus actually, but I thought might as well just keep it in there. If you earn an A in your first math class at ECC, you can retest. But I mean, at that point, what are you going to try to retest into? Calc 3? I don't know. I think that's more for students who like placed into like Math 96 or something. Anyway, there's a course outline here that you can peruse. I never know what they require of me anymore on this, so there's just a bunch of stuff that I just put on here so that I don't get yelled at. They're always sending my syllabus back to me. They're like, this is not right, that's not right. But anyway, any questions on the syllabus? Okay. I always have you guys introduce yourselves to me, and it takes a long time, and I kind of don't know. I mean, usually students don't even want to introduce themselves anyway. Is anyone like dying to introduce themselves? I know, nobody, I'm the only one who likes to hear. So you know what I'm gonna do maybe? Maybe we should have like one person per day. I don't know, I like to know who I'm talking to. Maybe I'll make it part of your homework and I'll have you submit something to me on D2L. I'll let you know about that Wednesday. I'm not going to make you introduce yourselves because I want to make sure we get through the algebra trig review. It doesn't mean that I don't care about you, but most of you, let's face it, I'm not going to see except on exam days because you're going to have your cameras off and I'm not going to know who you are anyway. It's so sad. I'm going to tell you one more time that I wish we were in the classroom together, but we're not. I'm like a broken record. Okay. I will introduce myself to you since I'm going to be just like floating through your consciousness for the next 8 weeks. Carrie Faruqi, I was a student at ECC. I loved my time at ECC. I was in PTK. I don't know if we have any PTKers. I was the secretary. Anyway, I really loved being at ECC. I transferred to U of I, Urbana-Champaign. And I have a bachelor's degree in mathematics from there. And then I got my master's in math from NIU with my teaching certification because I thought I wanted to teach high school. And then I taught at Dundee Crown for 2 years and was just like, I would have stayed there actually, but I got laid off because the state had a bunch of budget problems. This was like, I don't know, 12 years ago maybe. So I got laid off and then I started teaching at ECC in the GED program. And I always wanted to teach at ECC. I just thought it would be like one day when I retired from like doing my other jobs. But I love teaching at ECC. I used to work for Pearson full time and I worked at ECC in the evenings. So Pearson does my math lab. So I would write my math lab homework problems and I would deal with all the customer support issues that came up and correlate problems to new additions. And then when I had my first child, I left my full-time job and I kept my job at ECC, which I love. And I only teach in the evenings because I'm at home with my kids during the day. I still do a little freelancing for Pearson and my math lab, but kind of depends. So we're very busy over here. If you hear a bunch of yelling and screaming, don't be alarmed. The kids are under control, I'm sure. Luckily it's summer and they're gonna be outside. So it's not gonna be like with my spring class where it was like 10 degrees and my kids were going crazy in the house and there was so much screaming and I felt terrible. Yes, everyone's gonna be outside for the most part, but if you hear screaming, it's just my children. They're 2, 4, and 6. So lots of craziness. So I really enjoy this time away. As much as my husband doesn't like it, I really like it. So I'm really, really glad to at least be here, if not in the classroom. So that's me. Like I said, you guys are my only class this semester. You are all I'm going to be thinking about. I'm very quick with emails. So usually day of, it does pop up on my watch. So I try not to dismiss it because then sometimes it goes off as read and then I forget that it was not read, but usually that doesn't happen. So, but I'm going to see you often enough that it's not going to be a big deal. Please email me anytime you have questions. You can send me a message through WebAssign if you have a question on a particular homework problem. From that homework problem, you can hit, I think it's called Ask My Instructor, and it will send me a message and it will have the exact iteration of the problem that you're working on in WebAssign. So I'll be able to see what you're talking about, but just try to be descriptive. Don't say, I'm not sure how to do this problem. that's not really helpful. I mean, I can try to give you general guidance at that point, but you might be able to say, I tried this and I didn't come up with the correct answer. And then at least if I saw what you tried, I know if you were on the right path or not. So those WebAssign emails are supposed to get forwarded to my email address. I checked today and it said they were getting forwarded. So we should be good to go there. Does anyone need a little bit of, do you feel like you want me to show you around WebAssign a little bit? I don't know how much familiarity we have with WebAssign. Who has used WebAssign before? I was going to say raise your hand, but I guess there is a raise hand feature. Okay, so one person has used it before. Anyone else? Yes, 2 people raising their hands. I think this raise hand thing is new. Okay. So not a lot of us. Probably more of us have used my math lab. Students always have like a love-hate relationship with any sort of online homework. Yes, never used it. Could you go over it, please? Yes, let me share here. Hold on, let me get in there first. So WebAssign is very similar to my math lab, which most students have used before. Sometimes there are pop-ups on here and I don't realize that they're not sharing because it pops up and I'm only sharing a tab. So I probably should have shared my whole screen, but that's okay. All right, so when I go into my WebAssign, this is my homepage. Your homepage is gonna look a little bit different. Oh, share this tab instead, all right. Okay. All right, so yours is gonna have assignments in here. Now I actually did put assignments in here. There's one for a pre-calc review and there's one for like a getting to know WebAssign. It's 7 questions that's basically like, enter this answer, 1 + 2 equals, and it basically is just like, can you figure out how to interact with this website? But anyway, your assignments are gonna be listed here under my assignments. The grades in WebAssign, I don't think are going to integrate into D2L. So if you're confused about like, wait a second, I did this homework question and I got 100% on it, how come it's not showing up in D2L? It's because I have to become a data entry person and transfer all the grades over myself. So I usually do that after each chapter. So I don't want you to get confused. I'm going to have to integrate everything into D2L, and that's where your course grade is going to be. So no worries there. Let's see. So yeah, your assignments are going to be here, and I don't know if you can see like upcoming assignments. No, I don't think you can. No, okay. And that's fine. On my page, I'll be able to see it. Close student view. We'll do this. Okay, so my page looks like this, which is not what your page looks like, but it's going to have a schedule in it. I think your page looks kind of similar to this. And it'll have an assignment in here, but basically like, okay, for like a pre-calc review, for instance, I'm going to preview what this looks like. I should have set this to be available sooner because then I could have actually done the assignment like in real time. But it's basically, oh, sorry, I don't think you can see this pop-up. Let's see. Oh, no, you can see the pop-up. You guys can see the pop-up. It looks like you can. I heard a bloop. We can. Okay, excellent. Last semester, the pop-up didn't show, and I was like going on and on about something, and they were like, what are you talking about? Okay. So yeah, you know, like function values. Now, anything you see in red here, so you see 3x² + 7x - 1. This corresponds to the book problem. Now, I want you to note, by the way, that this number in the upper right-hand corner, well, not upper right-hand, but at the top of the exercise, it says Sullivan Calc 2 P.1.013. That corresponds to Chapter P, Section 1, Question 13. However, when you guys tell me I have a question on the homework, you're going to tell me I have a question on number 1. You're not going to say I have a question on number 13. However, let's say you were really stuck on how to do the problem. You could always look in the book at chapter P, number 1, or I'm sorry, section 1, number 13. And what you would be able to see is a similar question. And let's see the one that I'm looking at. Sorry, I can't share 2 things at one time. P113 in my book is 3x squared plus 2x minus 4. So it's going to be a very similar problem to the book problem. And this is the same thing that my math lab does. All of these problems correlate to the problems in your book. The red numbers are the ones that iterate. So that means that the red numbers are the ones that might be different from the numbers in your book. But the whole point is that they're supposed to still maintain the same level of difficulty. So if you go through the homework assignment and you find these function values, so f of 0, well, you let x be 0, fine. You get -1. I can't do this problem because it's a preview. But you would just basically fill in the answers to all of these function problems. So first they're talking about functions, and then they're going to talk about domain, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. But you can see now that you're going through here, now you're at P117. So this corresponds to number 17 in the book. But anything in red is going to iterate. So that means that if you do the problem again, so I think you have 3 tries to enter the right answer. And then if you're still wrong, it pops out a different question for you. And it's going to do that. I believe I have it set to 20. So just because it's not right on the first try doesn't mean it's automatically going to generate a new problem. It just means that you can try it again. And then if you miss it a certain number of times, then it will generate a new problem. So don't panic and think like, oh my gosh, I missed it 3 times. What am I going to do? You should be able to generate a new problem 20 times. And when you generate the new problem, the only thing that's going to change with the new problem is going to be what's in red. So even just these graphs with what's in red, that's going to change. Not all of them change. Like for instance, with this problem, the graph is going to be the exact same one as the book, but you know, the f of 0 is still going to be f of 0. The f of -6 will change. Like maybe the book asked you about f of -5 or something. But so you're basically in this case going to get the same problem again, and you're just going to have another chance to do f of -6. And if you're lucky, the problem won't have that many iterations, and you might get the same one over again. But you go through, you answer the homework questions, and then you get to the end. I think there's a submit button or a save button. Sorry, I'm in the preview, so this is a preview. Yeah, there's like a submit assignment at the bottom. But I mean, you don't have to have the whole thing done when you submit. You can, I think when you close it out, it just says, okay, do you want to save? And then you say yes. So that's kind of how that works. What I am going to do, though, is I'm going to make available to you, and I'm going to do this right now before I forget, a resource, which is the Student Solutions Manual. And you might find it useful, you might not find it useful. Let's see. Hold on a second. I got to pull this out of here. But let's say you're working through extra problems like I suggested, and you want to check your answers. You can check them in the back of your textbook, or you can look through the Student Solutions Manual, and it'll have worked out problems in there for the odd numbered problems. So I'm going to make all of these available to you. Student Solutions Manual. Fine. And I'm going to show you where it is because I'm going to make it available right now. I'm going to do it for all of them, but I'm starting with chapter P. So let's see, I'm going to share my window. I don't know, it's one of these, maybe. Yes, okay. So here I am under my student homepage. Am I in the home of the home? Resources. So when you go under here, under your book, under chapter P, I put the Student Solutions Manual there for you. Now it's in a new tab, so let me share that. And what this will do is it's going to have worked out problems for all the odd numbered problems in your book. So let's say you were working on the homework and you were on P.1.13, like I showed you, and you weren't getting it right. Well, you can always go to P.1.13. Now notice that it's the same as the one I said it was in the book, 3x squared plus 2x minus 4. And it'll show you f of 0, and it'll kind of show you how to get that. F of negative x, and it'll show you how to get that. And it'll do that for all of the odd numbered problems. This resource is not used enough, in my opinion, because you can always go back, note the problem number, go back to your book, match it up, and then look at the student solutions manual, and it'll have this all worked out for you. So it's not like it's just an answer like it would be in the back of your textbook. It actually has it worked out. And you can see, for instance, finding this difference quotient. It'll have all of this information in here, and it has more explanation for stuff. So I think that's a really useful tool. You don't have to use it, but I'll have that in there for each chapter for you so that you can use it if you would like to use it. But that's basically the gist of WebAssign. Yeah, just follow the due dates. So that's the getting familiar with WebAssign or whatever it was called, and then the pre-calc review will be due Wednesday at 6 p.m. So just note the due dates. They're not showing up for you right now because I didn't make them available until 8:20. I could technically do that like really quickly, and it would not take very much time at all, and then you could see what I'm talking about. So I might as well do that. I guess I just didn't want people sitting in class doing their homework, so I made it available a little bit later. But I can edit this. I can make it available at 6 p.m. One of them anyway. Okay. And then I'll show you the assignment. Here, share this tab. Okay, so your student home would be here. And one of the assignments I made available, says it's due Wednesday, June 9th at 6 p.m. And it'll have under here a current assignment. To access this assignment, open it first from your learning management system. Oh gosh. Please tell me they're not going to make you do that. Are you? So I thought that I was being super savvy today because someone was asking me a question. They were like, I don't usually teach Calc 1. I've never used WebAssign before. Can you show me how to integrate this into the learning management system? I was like, I don't know. I never used that, but you might want to ask so-and-so. But I came across it this afternoon. So I was like, yeah, maybe I'll integrate this into my LMS. I always wanted to know what that would look like. Well, apparently now you have to enter your assignments through D2L. Let me see if I can do this for you and show it to you real quick. I'm really glad that I did that, actually, because otherwise I never would have known, and I would be getting emails about it left and right. Hold on. Oh, did I change my password? Maybe. All right, I'm going to share my D2L page. I am going to go to view as student. Oh, I kind of wish I wonder if this is actually going to end up being a good thing. So when I go to content under my student view in D2L, I know some of you don't have access. You should be able to have access tomorrow. Under WebAssign here, under our content tab, it's this external learning tool. Let's see how this works. When you click on it, it should take you to WebAssign. And I think somehow it integrates. See, it's just taking me to my WebAssign instructor page. If I go to student, this might work better for you guys because you're students. I might have to have you guys try this and see what happens. I don't know if I can unintegrate the class once it's been integrated.
I just tried now.
Uh-huh.
And it doesn't work.
Did you went through D2L?
Yes, under content and like where you showed, and it takes me to my web assign, but it still says I need to open it from my learning management system.
Okay, so that really, really backfired. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can unintegrate it. Like, yeah, because I don't know. Well, the whole point of me integrating it was I thought that it was gonna upload the homework scores for me, so I didn't have to data entry, get everything scooted over, because I know other instructors use that feature. I'm gonna have to see.
We have access to the book though, so that's good, I guess.
You do? You have access to the e-text?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. Oh, and if you were wondering, I guess I didn't even think about that because students last semester told me they didn't have it. If you are in your student view and you go to my ebooks, you can check, maybe not everybody has it. You can click on that and then you should get this e-text version of your book that you can sort of navigate through. We're going to be using mostly in chapter 4 for doing our homework, but it's just the book in an electronic form. So same exact stuff. Sometimes it takes a minute to load properly. So if I move too fast, it jumps on me and I have to give it a minute. But it's the same examples that you can find in your book. So if you have the first edition and you need to look at exercises for the second edition, then this will work well for you. So there's that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out this LMS thing like sooner rather than later. Okay. Like 55 tabs open now. Okay. Anything else from WebAssign that you guys want to discuss other than the LMS situation? Okay. I'll look up the unintegrate because I don't like to do new things. So anytime something glitches, I'm like, nope, I did something new and now, nope, undo it. All right. Let's talk about an algebra trig review. I put an algebra trig review sheet on your D2L page under content. It's under reviews. Let's see. Here. I don't want to go over everything on here because actually some of this stuff I realized last semester really ended up not being used, but some of it got used all the time. So I really want to focus on the stuff that's most important. And then later on tonight, I'll post a key for this in case you wanted to see the answers to the other things that were much less important that you might not be using in this class. I will post a key for this. But I did want to talk about domain because we're going to be talking a lot about domain in calculus. And then I really wanted to talk about simplifying exponential expressions. And I wanted to talk about simplifying complex fractions. So those were the main things I wanted to discuss. And then maybe some inverse trig functions. So we'll do that. If you have this printed, that's fine. If you don't, that's also fine. You can just take notes. Sorry. Google Meet is different, and it's showing me like 2 versions of what I'm displaying, and it's very disorienting. I'm gonna try to not look at it, but it's very difficult. Let me zoom back in a little bit here too. Oh no, I'm in my Zoom. Okay, so you talked in algebra about finding the domain of a function. We're going to talk about that a lot in Calc 1. The reason we need to discuss domain is because we need to figure out places where your function is not going to exist, or specific values of x for which the function does not have a value. And there could be numerous things that occur whenever a value is excluded from the domain. We might be sometimes excluding just one value from the domain, sometimes 3 values, sometimes an infinite number of values, kind of depending on where we are. But we have certain types of functions that have specific types of domains. So for instance, 1a is a polynomial. We know it's a polynomial function because it doesn't have any variables in the denominator. It doesn't have any rational exponents or fractional exponents, if you want to think about it that way. It doesn't have any negative exponents. It doesn't have any radicals with your variables. It just has variables to whole number powers added to more variables with whole number powers. So that's how you know you're dealing with a polynomial function. Now, what you're trying to determine here for the domain of your function is you're really looking at what values won't work. You're going to ask yourself, is there a value of x for which I cannot find a value for f of x? So like, for instance, let's say I let x be 0. Well, f of x would just be 0 cubed plus 3 times 0 squared minus 4 times 0 plus 5. Okay, fine. F of 0 would be 5. But you can now see that no matter what value of x you choose, your value of f of x will exist. It might be a really large number, it might be a really small number, but you're always going to get a number to pop out. For polynomial functions, the domain is all real numbers. And normally when you're writing domain, you're going to do so in interval notation. So the way that you would write all real numbers in interval notation is to open up your interval using a parenthesis, and you're going to start at negative infinity, and you're going to go up to positive infinity, and you're going to close it with another parenthesis. Make sure that your infinities always have parentheses, not brackets. The parenthesis, if you haven't seen this in a while, just denotes a value you cannot actually obtain. So the fact that we have a parenthesis here means that we're going to approach infinity, but we're never going to quite get there. And we're going to approach negative infinity, but we're never going to quite get there because you can't actually equal infinity. I know it's a concept I have to discuss with my kids all the time. They seem to think infinity is just this quantity, but it's really just a growing quantity. So for a polynomial function, your domain is going to be all real numbers. Now, things get a little bit more interesting anytime we have variables in the denominator or anytime we have a variable inside a radical. So for B, we're looking at a situation where we have variables in the denominator. Now, the reason that matters is because whenever you have a variable in the denominator, we need to make sure that that variable won't result in your denominator being 0. We cannot divide by 0. I think there was a band or a song called Divide by 0 from like the 80s. Can't do that. Okay, so we can't divide by 0. By the way, this is a rational function. Rational functions are quotients of polynomials. So polynomial in the numerator, polynomial in the denominator. What you're going to do in this case is you're going to take the denominator and you're going to force it to not be equal to 0. Or you can set it to be equal to 0, whatever you have to do. What we're trying to do is we're going to find values of x for which the denominator would be 0, and we're going to exclude those values. To solve this, it's quadratic, but it doesn't have a constant term. We can go ahead and factor. We're going to factor out the GCF, which in this case is 5x. Remember, when you're factoring out a quantity, you're dividing by that quantity. So 5x squared divided by 5x just leaves you with x. And then 5x divided by 5x leaves you with 1. And we're going to say, okay, well, this quantity then cannot be equal to 0. And if you haven't factored in a while, welcome back to your life in mathematics. The zero factor property says that if we have our polynomial factored on the left-hand side and we have it set equal to 0, well, then I can take each factor and set it to be equal to or not equal to 0. So I can take the factor 5x, set it not equal to 0, and the factor x minus 1 and set it to be not equal to 0. And when I do that, divide both sides by 5, and I get that x can't be equal to 0. Add 1 to both sides, and you get that x cannot be equal to positive 1. So what this means is that if you let x be 0, well, you can see that 5 times 0 squared minus 5 times 0 is going to give you 0. And you're going to divide by 0, and that's bad. If you let x be equal to 1, well, then you have 5 minus 5, which is 0, which is also not good. Those are the two quantities that are going to result in the denominator having being 0. So we're going to exclude these values from the domain. So when we write the domain, I'm going to write it up here. Need to leave more space for this one. We're going to start it off at negative infinity because any number up until we hit 0 is fair game. Like I can use negative 1,000. Well, that's not going to give me 0 in the denominator, so we're good. All the way up to 0, I'm going to include any value, but I can't include 0. So I'm going to close off my parenthesis at 0, and that indicates that we're approaching 0, but we're never quite hitting 0. And then I'm going to use this cup. It's a union symbol that we use in our interval notation that kind of connects our intervals together. And I'm going to go from 0 to 1 because, I mean, technically any value between 0 and 1 is also fair game, like 1/2, 1/3, 1/6. Any value between 0 and 1 will not end up giving me a 0 in the denominator. And then any value from 1 to infinity is also fair game. So this is the way that we exclude values from our domain. And then we just use these union symbols to connect the intervals together. And again, we have to do that because we had a rational function where we had variables in the denominator. So we had places where the denominator could have been 0 depending on what value of x was chosen. Questions so far? So the dividing by 0 thing is a big deal. The other thing that is a big deal is having a negative value underneath your radical, because we cannot take an even root of a negative number. Oh, we have a question, which did not beep for me, but I saw it pop up. Can we write the answer in set builder notation? Oh, sorry, this thing is not beeping for me, and I missed a lot of questions. Book is offered with the website. Sorry. So some of you could not access the e-text. Interesting. I wonder why Burfin could access it, but not everybody. Interesting. Okay. Can we write the answer in set builder notation? It kind of depends on what you're being asked for on WebAssign. In Chapter P, they might let you do that. On your test, I'm going to specify interval notation. And when you do this later on in Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, you're going to be asked to use interval notation. So it's possible that every once in a while you might see set builder notation. And I know students find it easier. If you're not sure what that even means, it basically is like a brace, and it says x such that x cannot be equal to 0 and x cannot be equal to 1, something like that. If WebAssign asks for set builder notation, feel free to use it. I don't think they will, though. Usually interval notation is pretty standard. Yeah. Okay. And on your test, I will specify write the domain in interval notation. So with the radical, we want to make sure that the quantity under the radical is not going to be negative, because I can't take a square root of a negative number. Now, sometimes students think that that's the case with any radical, but that's only the case for even roots. So if I had like a cube root, for instance, or a fifth root, that I can do with a negative radicand. So the radicand is the quantity underneath here. I just have to be careful with square roots, fourth roots, sixth roots, any even roots. You won't see a ton of these as far as domain is concerned, but you'll see more square roots. But basically, anytime you have an even root, remember when your index isn't written, it's implied to be 2. It's kind of like how when you see just x, you assume it's 1x. Well, when you see a square root symbol, you assume the index is 2. So that's how you know you have a square root. Even roots can only have radicands that are greater than or equal to 0. So radicand must be greater than or equal to 0 for even roots. Odd roots are fair game. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take the radicand out. The radicand, remember, is that quantity underneath your radical. And we're going to force it to be greater than or equal to 0, and we're going to solve this inequality. So to solve the inequality, you'll subtract 3 from both sides. This is just like when you were solving linear inequalities in algebra. Sorry, I'm forgetting to subtract 3 here. And then you're going to divide by 5. And most of us remember that rule where if we multiply or divide both sides of an inequality by a negative number, we flip the direction of the inequality. You'll sometimes have to do that. In this case, we just divided by positive 5. So we leave the inequality alone. It does not matter that the negative 3 was negative because we didn't actually divide by negative 3. We took negative 3 and divided by positive 5. So we don't flip the inequality in this case. But what this is saying is that 5x plus 3 is going to be greater than or equal to 0 as long as x is greater than or equal to negative 3/5. So the equality part of this tells us that we can use a bracket. It means that x can be equal to negative 3/5 and it's still in our domain. But that's the smallest value that we can include. But anything greater than that, we can also include. So I'm going to, for our domain, set up my interval notation with a bracket. I'm going to start my domain at negative 3/5. And then I can include any value that's greater than or equal to that value. So I'm going to take it up to positive infinity. And remember, infinity and negative infinity always get parentheses, not brackets. So the domain of our radical function in this case, radical function, is negative 3/5 to infinity, and we're including the negative 3/5. I want to contrast that with D, however. Note that with D, we still have a square root, but it's in the denominator. So this is actually a case where we have a rational function that includes a radical function in its denominator. Now, in the last case, I took the radicand and set it to be greater than or equal to 0. Well, I can't do that in this case, because if I take 4 minus x and I set it to be greater than or equal to 0, that implies that 4 minus x can be equal to 0. Well, if 4 minus x equals 0, then I'm dividing by 0. The square root of 0 is 0. We can't divide by 0. So it makes a big difference here that the radicand is in the denominator. So we're just going to force this quantity to be strictly greater than 0, because we know it has to be positive, and we know it can't be equal to 0, or we'd be dividing by 0, and that would also be bad. Now, there are 2 different ways you can solve this inequality. One way is by adding x on both sides, and then you would have 4 is greater than x. Now, you can always switch your entire inequality and just reverse it. So I could say that 4 is greater than x means that x is less than 4. Those are equivalent statements. So that's one way of doing it. Some people always like to move the constant. If you're one of those people, then you probably started out by subtracting 4 on both sides, and then you would have negative x is greater than negative 4. Now, if you do that, you're going to have to divide both sides by negative 1 to get x by itself. When you take an inequality and you divide both sides by a negative number, you need to switch the direction of the inequality. So you would be getting here x is less than 4. So same answer in a different way. Either one of those is perfectly acceptable. We're talking about values of x that are less than 4. That means we're not actually including 4 as one of the values in the domain. So values of x that are less than 4 can be any value down to negative infinity and all the way up to, but not including 4. And since we don't have that equal to symbol, we use a parenthesis and not a bracket. And some people find this confusing because they're thinking, well, it's a radical. If we don't want the value underneath the radical to be negative, why would we go down to negative infinity? Well, I mean, think about what's happening here. You're taking 4 minus x. If x is negative, this becomes 4 minus, like for instance, 4 minus negative 1 is really 4 plus 1. So because of that, we can include these negative values. But if I wanted to include something like 5, well, I'm out of luck. 4 minus 5 is negative 1. I can't take the square root of negative 1 and get a real number. So that's domain. Questions on number 1A through D? Okay, I'm going to skip number 2 because I actually realized with this particular book that you are actually never going to be graphing trig functions. I can't think of a time in this book where you're actually going to have to graph a trig function. So you're not going to do that. But I will put up the key so that you can, if you wanted to be reminded of translations. I guess technically we could list the translation that's occurring. You might find that helpful. Remember that if you're taking a function and adding 1 to it, you're taking it and vertically shifting it up 1 unit. So that's something helpful to note. Remember that if you're talking about adding or subtracting inside the function, not outside the function, that's actually a shift horizontally. Remember that it's the opposite of what you think. So if you're adding something inside the function, you're actually shifting left. If you're subtracting, you're shifting to the right. So this would be a shift left by pi over 2. And you guys should have spent a lot of time in college algebra talking about that library of functions and shifting and reflecting and doing all kinds of crazy things to those functions. If you take a function and you multiply it by a constant, you're just vertically stretching the function. In the case of a trig function, we always thought about that as being an amplitude change. But this is a vertical stretch. Stretch by 2. And it is a little bit different for trig functions, but when you were looking at something like sine 2x and you were multiplying inside the function, remember that was like a period change for you. In this case, you have a horizontal shrink by 2 units. Because this would actually adjust the period of your function. Remember, you have that b equals what, 2 pi over b. Gosh, it's been a long time since I taught trig. I don't remember exactly what you used to do with that. 2 pi, I don't know, it'll come to me later. Some of you guys took that last semester and it's very fresh for you. I used to teach trig every semester right after I had a new baby until I had my 3rd baby. And then I was like, no, I'll teach Calc 1 this summer. And then my husband got a herniated disc. And then he told me to quit my job. And I said, no. He was really miserable that summer. But either way, it's a horizontal shrink by 2 units. So on your trig function, you'd be, the period would have, it would have twice as many graphs in its period than it would have otherwise. Completing the square. Are you going to do this semester? You might not do this semester. We'll come back to completing the square because there's other stuff I actually want to do. Square. For some reason, I'm thinking you do, but now I'm blanking on where it would be. Piecewise functions, you definitely will be doing this semester. They're kind of peppered in throughout the course. Students hate piecewise functions. Don't hate them, just get good at them. Do lots of practice. Okay, so piecewise functions. This is where you have one graph that's being drawn on one side of a boundary line and another graph that's being drawn on another side of a boundary line. And you're going to start these right away in chapter 1, where you're going to see some piecewise functions and you're going to be asked some calc questions about them. But what this is saying is that for any value of x that's less than 0, y equals 3. So f of x equals just means y equals. Now, don't forget that when you have something like y equals 3, remember y equals is a horizontal line. Students always want to think of y equals as a vertical line because the y-axis is vertical. But remember, we're talking about y equals. If y is 3 all the time, we're talking about what's happening on this horizontal y equals 3. So y equals 3 is a horizontal line. Now, y equals 3x, that's a whole nother story. That's a slope of 3 with a y-intercept of 0. So not the same thing. But y equals 3 is a horizontal line. That happens for any value of x that's less than 0. So we're going to be really careful here that when we write down y equals 3, which is right there, we're only going to include it for values of x that are less than 0. And that happens to the left of the x-axis. I'm going to draw an arrow here to indicate that that behavior continues on in that direction. And since this doesn't actually occur at x equals 0, only to the left, usually we denote that by leaving an open circle at x equals 0. It kind of says that as we approach 0 from the left, and I want you to get used to thinking about things like that because we're going to be talking about that a lot with calculus. As we approach 0 from the left, we are never actually going to hit x equals 0. We're only going to approach. That's why we have this open circle. But if x is greater than or equal to 0, we're looking at y equals x. So remember, y equals x is that identity function. It's just that straight horizontal diagonal, not horizontal, I'm sorry. It's that diagonal, the 45-degree diagonal. So y equals x, just, you know, if x is 2, y is 2. If x is 10, y is 10. So on and so forth. So you have this occurring for any value of x that's greater than 0. That happens to the right of the y-axis. And we want to show that this is actually including the point 0, 0, because when x is equal to 0, y is equal to x, so y must also be equal to 0. And I want to point something else out here. Remember that when you're dealing with functions, you have to be able to pass the vertical line test. So let's say you accidentally filled in both of these circles. You'd have a problem because if you tried to pass a vertical line through this graph, you would hit both of these points and you would not pass the vertical line test. You wouldn't actually have a function. But you know it's a function because it's f of x equals, so it has to be a function. So be careful and make sure that you don't actually violate that rule. So that was one of the more basic ones. You're not going to see anything too crazy in this class. But does anyone have a question about this particular piecewise function? I feel like I get a lot of questions on piecewise functions. This is driving me crazy because I can't see everybody, even though I have my grid set to see like 50 people. You know, I don't know how you guys feel about Google Meet, but last fall, I told my students that I was thinking about just switching over to Zoom. How did they feel about that? And they got very upset about it. They were just like, no, we hate Zoom. We don't want to do Zoom. Don't do it. And I was very surprised by that because I thought everybody hated Google Meet and I was the only one who liked it. But apparently people don't like Zoom. I don't know. It was weird. Anyway, I'm complaining today about Google Meet, but I usually really love it. So let's do B. Now, I have a boundary line set here at 0. Sometimes that'll shift, and it might be like for x is less than 3. But that number is pretty much always going to be the same no matter what it is. But we're talking about values of x that are less than 0. That means we're going to the left of the y-axis. To the left of the y-axis, our function is following negative x minus 2. Well, if you remember, y equals mx plus b, which is your slope-intercept form, m is your slope, which is your rise over run, and b is your y-intercept. Maybe it's been a while since some of you have seen this. You know why I like to have you introduce yourselves is because some of you haven't had calculus or haven't had math in like 15 years, and I always like to know that. So I am going to set up a little bit of like, give me some information about yourself kind of a thing. It's helpful for me to know if you have not seen something like this in 15 years. Okay, so right now I have a slope of -1 and a y-intercept of -2. What that means is that my graph is going to cross through the y-axis here. Now, I know that I can't actually be equal to 0 because I have a less than sign. So I'm going to leave the circle open at my y-intercept. But my y-intercept is -2. That's where I'm going to cross through the y-axis. And my slope, my rise over run, is -1. When you have a negative slope, it means that your line is going down from left to right. If my slope is -1, that means my rise over run is going to be -1. I'm going to take it the other direction. I'm going to go this way. So 1 over 1, 1 over 1, rise 1, run 1, rise 1, run 1. It's very hard to say. So remember, your slope is rise over run. So this is what -x minus 2 looks like. And we left the circle open at the y-intercept, which is -2. Now, on the other side of our y-axis, the function is quadratic. Now, if you don't remember your standard quadratic, it's got points at 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. If you know those points from your library of functions from college algebra, then you can take the fact that this is being horizontally shifted left 2 units. Horizontal shift left 2. And you can do it that way. If you don't remember your standard points for your standard parabola y equals x squared, then you're just going to have to plot some points. So we know that x equals 0 is included for this piece of the function. So if we let x be 0, you can even make a table of values. Well, if x equals 0, 0 plus 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. So when x is 0, y is 4. 2, 3, 4. And we can close the circle because we know that the function exists at 0. You can let x be 1. 1 is a value that's greater than or equal to 0. So maybe use 1. 1 plus 2 squared is 3 squared, which is 9. So you can go over here to 1, 9. And you can see now that if you continue this behavior, you're going to be off the grid, because if we go over to x equals 2, you're going to be up to 16, and we don't have space for that on our grid. We would have had to have rearranged our numbering. So you can just try to make that look as quadratic as you possibly can. Remember that if you were actually drawing this parabola, it would have had points here and here. I'm going to make those dotted because they don't actually exist because we can't graph them there, or we wouldn't have a function. But this would be the vertex of your parabola. I don't want them to look like they exist. Let me try to make that look slightly more faded. Okay. Questions on this piecewise function? Okay, and we will go over more of those, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. My guess is most of you recently had trig because it's your immediate prereq for this class. If you haven't had trig in a long time, we can let me know if you want me to come in early on Wednesday and we can go over these in the office hour, which I'll probably just start coming too early if everyone wants to show up. And so for number 5, you're just figuring out what x has to be in radians. So for instance, you know that the sine of 30 degrees is a half. Yes, I'm the trig help. Yeah, I know. You know what's amazing to me? Students are always like, oh, trig is so easy. Trig is so easy. I've taught trig so many times and students were never that good at it. So I don't know why there's this misconception that trig is so easy. I mean, yeah, I guess if all you're doing is finding trig values all day, but if you're actually like solving trig equations and finding inverse trig function values, it can be tricky. Yes, so if you remember your unit circle, there might be a copy of it in your text if you have it. I think there is. If it's, it'll be in chapter P if it's not in the front cover. I am going to post. Let me get my sticky notes out because during the lesson I'm always like, let me remind myself to post this. I'm going to post for you a trig handout. And it's a really nice handout that you can use on your exams as part of your notes, but everything is just right there. I don't have it printed right now next to me, but I am going to put it on D2L with like handouts or something. Yeah, so for these, a lot of these you should have memorized, but you're going to have to figure out what quadrants they're in. So we know that all students take calc, right? Not all of them, but they should. All of your trig functions are going to be positive in quadrant 1. In quadrant 2, sine and its reciprocal, which is cosecant, are positive. Everything else is negative. In quadrant 3, tangent and cotangent are positive. Everything else is negative. In quadrant 4, cosine and its reciprocal, secant, are positive. Everything else is negative. So if you remember the all students take calc, that's helpful to you. If you remember anything about reference angles, yeah, you'll be able to use the unit circle for your exams. Absolutely. If you remember anything about reference angles, you'll know that you're looking for, if sine has to be a half, it's positive. Sine's only positive in quadrants 1 and 2. A reference angle of pi over 6 looks like that. So then you're just trying to figure out, well, what is that angle? Well, it's pi minus pi over 6, which is 5 pi over 6. You can always check these in your calculator if you think you're sure, but you're not totally positive. Sine of, you can say, okay, sine. I'll make sure you're in radian mode. Should always be in radian mode. Oh, sorry, I forgot that I'm dealing with this crazy lighting situation. I don't even want to get into this whole situation with my emulator and my graphing calculator and how the school has been promising to pay for it for so long and it hasn't happened. And then I missed the deadline to submit for reimbursement. So, you guys, I don't want to talk about it. But sine pi over 6 does indeed give you a half. I have to do this crazy thing and then I have to bring my lamp over. This will be better on a day when it's nicer outside and it's not like super rainy and terrible. But yeah, sine 5 pi over 6, you can do the same thing. Double check. Yes, it is indeed a half. So you can use the unit circle to do that. There should be a unit circle in chapter P. I want to say P3. Like I said, I'm going to post a really nice handout that I like. Trig functions, P6. I mean, they don't really have a unit circle in here, but they have, see, you guys, like this, I shouldn't complain. Imagine if this whole pandemic had happened like 20 years prior, I would never have had a document camera. I would have never had all of these wonderful things that I have, so I cannot complain. let me do a flip here. Your book does have these basic trig function values in it on page, oh, flip for me, there we go. 54. So it'll have x is pi over 6, sine x is a half, x is 5 pi over 6, sine x is a half, so on and so forth. For the major trig functions. And then for the other ones, so if this is a table for sine. I don't know if they have one for cosine or if they expect you to use the cosine, the co-function identities. They have a table for tangent. Oh, this one I need to flip again for. Flip. So here's your tangent table on page 57. So if you're thinking about these tangent values right now, for number, I'm covering this up. C, tangent theta is root 3 over 3. Well, you know definitely pi over 6 is going to be one of those, and then you're going to have to find the angle where the other one occurs because they didn't give you the whole unit circle here. So if you know pi over 6, I do theta. Okay, fine. Tangent is also positive in quadrant 3. So you're going to be looking for the reference angle in quadrant 3. Or you're looking for the angles in quadrant 3 such that there's a reference angle of pi over 6. And that's going to be pi plus pi over 6. So pi plus another pi over 6 is 7 pi over 6. So I guess those tables are kind of helpful, but I really don't think it's a good idea long term. But like I said, I'll post a unit circle. I have a file on here for it. It's just, do I really want to like unshare, share again? The cosine values, well, cosine is a half when x is equal to pi over 3. But cosine is going to be negative in quadrant 2 and quadrant 3. So you're looking for the quadrants 2 and 3 angles with reference angles of pi over 3. So this one is going to be pi over 2 plus another pi over 3. So that's going to be 2 pi over 3. Or 2/3 of the way to pi. And then this one is going to be, you can think of it the opposite. You can go 2 pi minus 2 pi over 3, or you can take pi plus pi over 3, and you'll get 4 pi over 3. So quick trig review for you there. Also, as long as you know the sine and the cosine values, you can use the identity that tangent theta is sine theta over cosine theta. So let's say you didn't know this tangent value. You could always think about like, okay, well, like let's take the sine of pi over 6 over the cosine of pi over 6, and those would simplify to the same values. But if you tried sine pi over 3 over cosine pi over 3, you would not get this answer. So you would kind of know like, okay, that's not going to work. So you can always use those identities. As far as inverse trig functions are concerned, and this is actually going to pop up more often than you would think. For inverse trig functions, these are very specific. An inverse sine only occurs in 2 places. Quadrant 1 if it's positive, and quadrant 4 if it's negative. Now, you learned this in trig, but a lot of people, I don't know, like it never actually sinks in trig. I don't know what happens because I teach trig all the time and I still feel like students never quite get this. If you're talking about inverse trig functions, they're going to be positive in quadrant 1, negative in quadrant 4, not 3 pi over 2 to 2 pi, but 0 to negative pi over 2. If you're talking about inverse sine, inverse tangent, I'm going to be referring back to this in like another month because people are going to be asking me about it again. And I'm going to say, go check out that key and remember what we talked about in class. And the inverse cosecant. And then if those values are negative, you're going to be located down here in quadrant 4. So inverse sine is less than 0, inverse tangent is less than 0, and the inverse cosecant is less than 0. You'll find that value between negative pi over 2 and 0. Now note that, okay, for instance, we know that the sine of pi over 6 is a half. If we're looking for the inverse sine of negative a half, well, we're looking for the sine value to actually be negative. So we know it's occurring in quadrant 4. But watch what happens when you actually enter this into your calculator, because your calculator knows what to do. So if I enter inverse sine, which by the way is second sine, that gives you the inverse sine of negative a half, it knows not only the actual reference angle, but it's going to put it not only in the right quadrant, but it's going to give you the exact values that are actually corresponding to that value. So it's putting it as negative 0.5235. Don't even worry about the 0.5235 because what you know is that what you're really looking for is this angle pi over 6. So you can make sure that that's equivalent to that angle that you're looking for. Negative pi over 6 is indeed equivalent to this approximate negative 0.5236. So double check it by just popping in that exact value because your calculator is not actually going to give you an exact angle. I'm going to be asking you for exact angles. So make sure you know those. So it's not, what am I looking for? It's negative pi over 6. It's not 11 pi over 6. It's negative pi over 6. So it's down here. Okay, now the difference is that with cosine, cotangent, and secant, you're going from into quadrants 1 and 2. So that those are a little bit easier to remember. So inverse cosine being positive, inverse secant being positive, and inverse cotangent being positive will all be in quadrant 1, and inverse cosine being negative, inverse secant being negative, and inverse cotangent being negative will all be in quadrant 2 from pi over 2 to pi. So yeah. But the same idea here for inverse tangent being negative. We know that the reference angle is going to be pi over 4. So we're actually looking at negative pi over 4 here. That's why I gave you all negative ones, because they're trickier. And then if the inverse cosine is negative, it's in quadrant 2. It's not in quadrant 4. So I know that the cosine of 2 pi over 3 is negative a half. And we're actually using that quadrant 2 value, not the quadrant 3 value. For the inverse trig functions, we're only looking at one possibility for whether it's negative or positive. Okay, so it's 8:11. I technically have to be done. I'm not super worried about those two, so that's not a big deal. If I were you, and I guess maybe I could spend a couple minutes on it on Wednesday, I would do number 7. I'm going to post the key so you can look at those and see if you have questions. Number 8 is something that'll be a little more important to you. Yeah, maybe number 9. And then simplifying the complex fractions for number 10. So I'm going to post the key. You look at these, and if you have questions on them, we can go over them on Wednesday. Other than that, I mean, these are just review. You guys have probably seen these pretty recently. We're going to jump into 1-1 on Wednesday. All right, so you're off tomorrow. take some time to get acquainted with WebAssign. I'm going to figure out this LMS thing as quickly as I possibly can because that's crucial. You need to get started right away. There is a review assignment up there for you on WebAssign that should be available at 8:20. I just have to figure out to make a way to make sure you can get into it. And that's all. If you have any general questions, stick around. I'll be on for a few more minutes. Let me know.
Okay, so we only have the assignment you will put at 8:20 for tonight.
Yeah, so there'll be like a getting to know WebAssign, which is 7 questions.
Oh,
And then
okay.
there's like a review, algebra trig review. I don't remember how many questions that is, but that looks like that one I was previewing when I was scrolling through it. Oh, the test will be PDFs that I'll email to you. So you'll be doing it by hand. If you have a printer, you can print it out. If you don't have a printer, you can just do it on your own paper.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are quizzes multiple choice or written, or how are those?
For the most part, they're going to be multiple choice just because they're on D2L, and I cannot get it to work. I'm always paranoid that something's going to happen, like a student's going to enter an answer and it's not going to be accepted. So it's just easier for me to make them multiple choice. Yeah. Those two, yes. So unless there's some crazy issue with me not being able to fix this stupid learning management system integration, your homework should be due Wednesday. As long as I finish it tonight, you should have plenty of time. So yeah, those 2 assignments will be due Wednesday. Okay, so I need to post a trig handout. I need to fix LMS for WebAssign. I need to post the key to the trig review. Oh, and I needed to check the tutoring. Okay, I'm going to stop my recording. Okay, sometimes, in case anyone cares, the recording takes like an hour sometimes to compile, but I don't know how long it takes the Google version of it,
Miss
but
Faruqi?
on YouTube, it'll probably be like an hour.
Miss Faruqi?
Yes.
So is it alright if I purchase the